And we want to give you breaking news because Hawaii is under a tsunami warning. Wanted to give you details of what's going on and what you need to know. Again, far to the north of us in the Pacific, there was a powerful earthquake just a little while ago. As we head up to the northern end of the Pacific, that earthquake off of Russia.
Hawaii found itself bracing as tsunami waves struck following a massive magnitude 8.8 earthquake off Russia's Kamchatka Peninsula. Initial warnings escalated into evacuations across the islands. Evacuation sirens sounded in Honolulu, traffic snarled as people heeded warnings, and roads were opened, including Oprah Winfrey's private road on Maui, to help residents move inland. Waves measuring roughly 4 to 5 feet, around 1.3 to 1.7 meters, were observed at Kahului on Maui, in Hilo Bay, and around Oahu's Halewa Boat Harbor, and residents were advised to steer clear of coastlines for hours as multiple follow-up waves loomed. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. From that point, the situation unfolded in dramatic detail across the Hawaiian archipelago and beyond. The earthquake itself, an 8.8 magnitude tremor that struck beneath the Pacific near Kamchatka at about 19.3 kilometers depth, sent shockwaves racing across the ocean. In nearby Russian territories such as the Kuril Islands, tsunami waves soared to 3 to 5 meters, flooding coastal towns and sweeping vessels out to sea. Western Pacific nations including Japan, French Polynesia, and multiple Pacific islands issued alerts. Japan evacuated nearly 2 million people. A fatality occurred when a car plunged off a cliff during evacuation. Importantly for Hawaii, though initial alerts were dire, authorities later dispatched assurances that no catastrophic tsunami was expected. But the unfolding timeline featured high tension. Hawaii's emergency response stepped into motion. Governor Josh Green declared a state of emergency, activating both statewide and county emergency operations centers. Civil defense agencies issued urgent directives to evacuate coastal zones immediately. Sirens wailed in Honolulu, Maui, and the Big Island. On Maui, Oprah Winfrey intervened by opening her private access road, allowing 50 vehicles at a time to evacuate upcountry communities, facilitating smoother flow amid gridlock. Meanwhile, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, PTWC, monitored wave patterns via gauges. At Midway Atoll, over 2,000 kilometers from Hawaii, waves were nearly 1 meter in amplitude. In Hilo, the gauge showed a height of 4.9 feet above normal, while Kahului recorded about 4 feet. Halewa Harbor observed sudden receding of water by 6-9 meters, 20-30 feet, revealing boats stranded on dry sand and rock. These shifts raised alarm. Such a drop often precedes a powerful return surge. Those monitoring the threat emphasized that tsunami events come not as a single wave but as a series. Officials warned the initial wave may be followed by larger, more forceful surges over many hours. Despite gauges showing modest early impacts, residents were urged to remain in evacuation zones until the warning was fully lifted. The governor echoed that sentiment, cautioning that the danger was not over yet. Flooding did occur in low-lying coastal areas. In Hilo Bay, Hilo's shoreline businesses like the SCP Hilo Hotel reported water intrusion. Halewa Boat Harbor saw flooding and stranded vessels. Still, authorities emphasized that no significant damage or major injuries had been reported as yet. Officials credited early warning systems, public compliance, and emergency infrastructure for minimizing harm. As the night wore on, the tsunami warning was downgraded to an advisory across the Hawaiian Islands. Evacuation orders on Oahu and the Big Island were lifted once wave activity subsided. Flights out of Honolulu resumed, roads reopened, and shelters closed. On the U.S. West Coast, minor waves were felt in Northern California up to around 1.6 feet, prompting ongoing advisories but no major inundation. Even after initial alerts eased, experts and officials cautioned that aftershocks could come and additional wave activity might persist for up to 30 hours. People were advised to stay away from harbors, beaches, and marinas as dangerous currents continued long after wave arrival. In the aftermath, reflections turned toward Hawaii's geological vulnerability. Hilo Bay has earned the moniker Tsunami Capital of the United States, having suffered destructive waves in 1946 and 1960. Its topography focuses tsunami energy directly into its harbor, historically amplifying the impact. Emergency systems learned from those earlier disasters have since been significantly strengthened. Looking ahead, authorities continue close monitoring. Seismologists warn that sizable aftershocks, some estimated up to magnitude 7.5, could follow in the coming weeks, and officials reiterate that follow-up waves remain a risk. The state's Civil Defense Agency has posted updates urging residents not to return to evacuated areas prematurely. In the days to follow, emergency management departments across Hawaii will assess damage or coastal erosion, analyze infrastructure resilience, and review evacuation protocols. While major losses seem likely avoided, these moments underscore the island chain's perpetual vulnerability to Pacific seismic activity and the critical importance of preparedness. Experts may also study the oceanographic data to refine tsunami modeling for far-reaching quakes like this one, ensuring future warnings reach people faster and more reliably. For now, Hawaii remains on alert, its residents cautious, and its emergency systems active, wearing vigilance as its first line of defense. As the tsunami threat gradually receded from the Hawaiian shores, attention turned inward, to the social, scientific, and systemic dimensions of how the crisis unfolded. Beneath the anxious minutes of sirens and the visible rush to higher ground, deeper currents of planning, community resilience, and environmental understanding moved into focus. While the incident was narrowly avoided as a major disaster, it laid bare the strengths and vulnerabilities of a state living at the intersection of tectonic forces and climate extremes. The geological context of the tsunami threat extends beyond just a reaction to an isolated earthquake. Hawaii lies in the middle of the Pacific Ring of Fire, a volatile loop of seismic and volcanic activity that encircles the ocean. Though the islands themselves are volcanically active, especially the Big Islands Mauna Loa and Kilauea, the primary tsunami threats come from distant subduction zones. The Kamchatka Peninsula, the Aleutian Trench, and the Japan Trench are all capable of producing undersea quakes powerful enough to displace massive volumes of seawater. Hawaii, sitting thousands of kilometers away, is often a downstream victim of these remote events. Tsunami generation requires more than just magnitude. It demands vertical displacement of the seafloor. In the case of the Kamchatka event, the quake's mechanism appeared to include thrust motion, which lifts and drops the ocean floor, creating a powerful pulse that spreads out across the Pacific at jetliner speeds. Depending on the water depth, these tsunami waves can travel at up to 800 kilometers per hour, giving Hawaii anywhere from 4 to 12 hours of lead time, depending on the epicenter. That window is both a gift and a challenge. Time enough to act, but little margin for error. Scientists at the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center, headquartered in Honolulu, are tasked with monitoring seismic data in real time. Using a network of seismic sensors, ocean bottom pressure recorders, and coastal tide gauges, they interpret whether a given quake has generated a tsunami, and if so, how it might behave across vast ocean distances. In this event, their models had to calculate the wave's size, speed, and projected landfall points across an irregular ocean basin shaped by ridges, trenches, and continental shelves. Their decisions set in motion statewide evacuations, media alerts, and even international coordination across Pacific Rim countries. Hawaii's tsunami siren system, first installed in the aftermath of deadly mid-20th century events, played a central role. These sirens, perched along beaches and in populated areas, are tested monthly. When they sounded across the islands this time, they signaled more than danger. They also reflected public trust in a system that had seen continuous upgrades. The signal was unmistakable. Move inland, seek higher ground, and do not wait. For many, the sirens were joined by emergency text alerts and civil defense broadcasts, underscoring the layered communication approach required to reach over 1 million people quickly. Notably, the evacuation dynamics revealed cultural and logistical nuances. In urban Honolulu, high-rises near Waikiki saw residents voluntarily moving to interior corridors or traveling to higher floors. On the outer islands, especially Maui and the Big Island, where topography offers quick elevation changes, roads to upland zones became jammed. Here, private initiatives like Oprah Winfrey's opening of her access road underscore how even personal choices can ripple across public safety. That singular act symbolized a larger truth. In island communities, cooperation often bridges the gap between government response and grassroots resilience. Evacuation isn't a simple matter of distance. Coastal communities include vulnerable populations, elderly residents, people with disabilities, tourists unfamiliar with local geography. Shelters had to be opened with haste, stocked with supplies, and manned by volunteers trained in disaster protocols. In some areas, such as Hilo and Lahaina, where tsunami run-up history is deeply etched into civic memory, response times were notably fast. Schools canceled classes, hospitals implemented emergency protocols, and boats left harbor to avoid damage from surge backflow. Across the islands, the choreography of response moved with practiced urgency. The media's role during such crises is also worth noting. Live broadcasts from harbors, aerial drone footage of receding water lines, and interviews with emergency officials all help provide clarity amid chaos. Yet with social media, the double-edged sword of rapid communication became evident. Misinformation, rumors of collapsing buildings, false alarms about wave heights, exaggerated predictions, circulated within hours. Officials had to actively counter such rumors to maintain calm. In future events, balancing speed with accuracy in digital communication will likely become an even sharper priority. Behind the surface drama lies the quiet work of oceanographers, disaster planners, and geologists who have spent decades studying Hawaii's tsunami past. The island's history is a complex weave of ancient legends, colonial records, and scientific archives. Native Hawaiian oral traditions speak of great sea waves and flooded valleys long before Western records began. These stories are now being integrated with historical data to form a more holistic understanding of risk. For instance, petroglyphs on the Big Island depict high water lines, possibly indicating ancient tsunami levels, long before modern gauges were available. Tsunami modeling has evolved dramatically in recent years. Thanks to supercomputing and advanced bathymetric mapping, researchers can now simulate thousands of hypothetical quakes and analyze their effects on Hawaii's coastlines. These models feed into preparedness tools used by civil defense offices and influence zoning decisions in coastal development. In some regions, these simulations have been used to redraw evacuation zones, reroute infrastructure, and even modify school curricula to include tsunami drills. Education, indeed, is a frontline defense. Hawaii's Department of Education incorporates natural disaster training into school programs. Children are taught the basics of how and why tsunamis form, how to recognize natural warning signs like sudden ocean recession, and where to go during an alert. These lessons build a culture of readiness that extends beyond rote drills. Anecdotes from the recent event suggested that many families with children acted faster and more decisively, perhaps a sign that this educational investment is paying off. Insurance and economic implications of tsunami events also form an important layer of response and recovery. Even when physical damage is limited, commercial disruption can be significant. Businesses along tourist corridors close temporarily, leading to lost revenue. Fishermen may lose catch or face delays at sea. Infrastructure like water and power systems may be temporarily impacted. Insurers conduct rapid assessments to determine eligibility for compensation, and FEMA may provide federal aid if disaster declarations escalate. While Hawaii dodged major economic losses this time, the state's economy remains susceptible to long-tail disruptions from such events. Environmentally, tsunamis can produce unexpected consequences. Sudden surges can damage coral reefs, uproot native coastal vegetation, and scatter marine debris inland. Conservation groups often conduct post-event assessments to determine habitat impacts, especially in delicate ecosystems like Hanauma Bay or the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. While tsunami waves are different from hurricanes in their energy dispersion, their sheer force can reshape beaches, erode dunes, and alter sediment flows in ways that take years to correct. In the hours and days following the event, the spiritual dimension of Hawaii's culture also emerged. Across the islands, residents gathered in prayer and ceremony. For many native Hawaiians, the sea is not just a physical boundary, it is a living entity imbued with mana, spiritual power. The ocean's sudden fury was interpreted by some as a sign, a message, or a call for reflection. Kahu, or spiritual leaders, led chants and offered blessings for protection, healing, and guidance. This cultural lens provided comfort and cohesion amid uncertainty. Simultaneously, the incident sparked fresh debates about Hawaii's preparedness for compounded disasters. What if the tsunami had coincided with a hurricane? Or with an ongoing lava flow on the Big Island? Could hospitals handle dual emergencies? Are emergency shelters equipped for prolonged stays if transportation networks are compromised? Experts are increasingly looking at these compound scenarios in simulation studies to ensure the state is not caught unprepared in a multi-threat environment. Another area that has come under scrutiny is maritime infrastructure. While boats heading to deeper waters is a common protective measure, many small harbors lack the design to withstand heavy surge flow. Boat ramps, jetties, and fuel stations are all points of vulnerability. Officials are considering structural reinforcements for key ports such as Hilo Harbor, Nawiliwili on Kauai, and Lahaina Harbor on Maui. Upgrades may include breakwater extensions, surge walls, or tsunami-resistant mooring systems. Tourism, Hawaii's economic backbone, also demands special attention during tsunami threats. With thousands of visitors arriving daily, many from places without tsunami risk, there is a steep learning curve. Hotels carry evacuation maps in every room, and some have designated higher floor gathering points. However, not all tourists read these materials. Going forward, state agencies may consider mandating orientation videos on flights or at airports to ensure awareness. Tour operators, especially for ocean excursions, must also carry emergency radios and conduct briefings on tsunami protocols before departure. The resilience of Hawaii's telecom network also played a vital role. Cell towers, emergency radio systems, and satellite communications held up under the load, enabling both official messaging and family check-ins. Power utilities, meanwhile, worked closely with emergency management to maintain service to critical infrastructure such as hospitals and desalination plants. While rolling blackouts were avoided, contingency planning included generator deployment and backup power for water pumping stations. In terms of psychological impact, even narrowly avoided disasters leave imprints. Mental health counselors and community support networks often mobilize in the aftermath of such events to address anxiety, trauma, and fatigue. This is particularly true for children, elderly residents, and those who have previously lived through natural disasters. Hawaii's Department of Health has mobile crisis teams that can deploy to shelters and schools, offering counseling and referrals. Ensuring psychological resilience is now seen as integral to community recovery. One unexpected angle that emerged during the event was the role of amateur radio operators, known as ham radio users. In areas where cell coverage wavered or officials needed decentralized communication, these licensed operators provided vital links. The Amateur Radio Emergency Service AIRES has long been part of Hawaii's disaster planning, and their quiet, behind-the-scenes work continues to be a linchpin in resilient communications. There is the question of climate change and its subtle but powerful influence on tsunami dynamics. While earthquakes are not driven by climate, sea level rise alters the baseline against which tsunami impacts are measured. A wave that might have caused only minor inundation 50 years ago could now travel farther inland due to elevated sea levels and degraded natural barriers. Moreover, erosion of coral reefs and mangrove systems diminishes natural buffers. Climate adaptation planning in Hawaii is increasingly integrating tsunami science to better understand these compounded effects. What's clear from this recent event is that while nature's power remains immense, Hawaii is not without defenses. Its people, shaped by centuries of living with the ocean, bring a deep well of knowledge and solidarity. Its institutions, refined through decades of disasters, act quickly and collaboratively, and its scientists, ever watching the seismic pulse of the Pacific, stand ready to translate distant tremors into local safety. This convergence of technology, tradition, and tenacity is what shields the islands when the ocean turns restless. As the Pacific continues to churn with tectonic unrest, Hawaii's vigilance, renewed and informed, remains its most potent form of survival. In the quiet hours following the lifting of the tsunami advisory, a different kind of reflection took place across Hawaii. A conversation about sustainability, self-sufficiency, and infrastructure independence. The island's isolation, once a defensive barrier against outside threat, also underscores their reliance on imported goods, especially food, fuel, and medical supplies. A major tsunami, especially one that damages harbors or airstrips, could choke off supply lines for days or even weeks. In light of this, local leaders have renewed calls to invest in localized agriculture, distributed energy systems like solar microgrids, and diversified supply chains that can operate under duress. Urban planning is another topic being revisited with greater urgency. In low-lying areas such as Waikiki or Kahului, land use policies may need to evolve in response to both tsunami threat and sea level rise. Proposals that were once controversial, such as elevated evacuation towers or redesigning coastal roads, are finding new traction. Architectural firms are exploring flood-resilient construction techniques, including amphibious foundations and stilt-based housing that allow structures to absorb or avoid tsunami forces. These innovations, while expensive, are increasingly viewed as essential investments in the face of compounding natural hazards. There is also a growing interest in integrating traditional Hawaiian knowledge systems with modern disaster planning. Indigenous practices which emphasize observation of natural signs, changes in animal behavior, ocean coloration, wind shifts, have long warned of environmental shifts that precede major events. Programs connecting kupuna elders with schoolchildren are helping pass down these ancestral insights, restoring respect for intuition alongside data-driven alerts. This blend of wisdom, rooted in generations of coexistence with nature, adds a layer of adaptive intelligence that no satellite or sensor can replicate. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on the Hawaii tsunami? Will it worsen or calm down soon? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.